The story begins with a painter who completes a piece of artwork and uploads it to his online account. Having been paid for the commission, after finishing his work, he starts cleaning up. Just then, the doorbell rings. When he opens the door, a man shows his ID and says, "I'm Detective Kim from Violent Crimes Unit Team 1. I'm looking for Mr. Han Kyo, who is responsible for posting the Cam of Darkness series on social media. Are you Mr. Han? We have a warrant to search this place." With that, they enter, confiscating his paintings and laptop. Kyo thinks to himself that at just 22 years old, he has suddenly been arrested. A public defender was assigned to his case, but it didn't help. To him, the painting was nothing more than a paid commission. He's a struggling artist who survives by creating artwork for clients he finds online. One day, he received an offer to create a 3-part painting series. The client asked him to upload the paintings to his social media, and after each upload, the payment would be transferred to him. Later, the detective questions him, asking if he has any close connections or friends. Kyo replies that he has lived alone since he was 18, and all his friends have moved on with their lives, so he's no longer in touch with anyone. The detective responds that this doesn't help his situation. He points out that Kyo painted crime scenes in detail without authorization, and without any close contacts. He has no way to prove his innocence. Kyo argues that the client's social media and bank account should serve as proof. The detective responds that those accounts belong to dead people. The scene shifts to Kyo being taken to prison, where he realizes he has been placed in an alpha facility. This terrifies him. His lawyer arrives and questions the jailer, pointing out that Kyo is an Omega and shouldn't be in an alpha prison. The jailer claims it must be a mistake from the Ministry of Justice, but says they must follow orders until it is corrected. The lawyer suggests a temporary solution. Since Kyo is in a 2-person cell and the other inmate may not know, they will replace his vitamins with suppressants while the transfer paperwork is prepared. He reassures Kyo that the process will be handled as quickly as possible. Unbeknownst to them, another prisoner overhears the entire conversation. Later, during lunch, the same man secretly watching gives Kyo pills, telling him not to forget his vitamins. Afterward, Kyo sits alone, too afraid to take them. Soon, he overhears others talking and realizes they already know he's an Omega, and that the pills he was given are actually heat-induced. As he heads to the laundry area, other alpha prisoners stare at him hungrily. While doing his laundry, a group of inmates approaches and grabs him. They mockingly say a welcome party is in order for a newcomer. One of them forces his head up and asks if it's true that he's an Omega. Kyo denies it, but they don't believe him. They find the pill he was given and force it into his mouth. They tell him it's a heat inducer and won't take long to work. Soon, Kyo goes into heat, and the other prisoners begin to react to his scent. One of them is about to take advantage of him when a guard's voice interrupts. The prisoners quickly back off and act normal. The guard scolds them for gathering and reminds them of the rules, then leaves after warning them not to cause trouble. As soon as the guard is gone, the prisoners grab Kyo again. They invite a newly transferred inmate to join them. The newcomer approaches Kyo, comments that he looks tempting, but says he doesn't want trouble on his first day. Instead, he takes Kyo away, leaving the others behind. As they leave, the new prisoner quietly tells Kyo to stop trembling, assuring him he has no intention of harming him. He explains he only acted that way to avoid suspicion. However, Kyo can barely process his words due to the effects of the drug. Back in the cell, the newcomer looks around, but Kyo suddenly grabs him and starts unbuttoning his shirt. Shocked, the man stops him and asks what he's doing. Kyo, in tears, explains he was forced to take a heat-inducing drug. Overcome, he collapses onto him. The man warns that Kyo is in a dangerous state. Despite trying to keep things under control, Kyo continues acting impulsively. The man worries they might be seen and pulls him aside, reminding him that he just helped him and that Kyo should calm down instead of causing trouble. When he lets go, Kyo falls to the ground, desperately asking for help. Eventually, the man gives in and helps him. Afterward, he washes his hands. Seeing that Kyo still hasn't fully recovered, he gives him something else, explaining it's an inhibitor he stole and had intended to give earlier. Kyo is shocked and embarrassed. That night, as the lights go out, they lie down to sleep. Kyo thinks to himself how humiliating the situation is. He never wanted to be involved with an alpha, yet everything is spiraling out of control. He wonders why the man smelled so pleasant and whether the inhibitor was real, noting that the man seemed completely in control the entire time. The man then speaks, saying he's been thinking about what happened and regrets being so kind, as that's not his usual nature. He reminds Kyo that he has helped him twice already and suggests that Kyo should return the favor. Frightened, Kyo pretends to be asleep. The man tests him, whispering near his ear until Kyo reacts. Realizing he's awake, Kyo retreats to a corner in fear. The man calls out his behavior and warns him not to make excuses, claiming he can see through his tricks. As they continue talking, the man questions Kyo about the rumors that he killed young Alpha. Kyo is shocked that he knows this and insists he would never do such a thing. The man responds cynically, saying everyone claims innocence, and that regret is common among prisoners. Kyo reflects that none of the alphas around him seem ordinary. Something feels off about them. The man then reveals that he has connections inside the prison and knows more than he should. He tells Kyo to listen carefully and lays out 3 rules. Trust no one, ensure his heat never becomes a problem again, and never repeat what happened earlier. He warns that in this place, there are both dogs who may seem friendly and wolves who can capture and harm him, and it's impossible to tell the difference. He introduces himself as Yeri and makes it clear he's neither Kyo's protector nor someone to be relied upon. Terrified and confused, Kyo doesn't know whether Yeri is someone trying to help him or someone dangerous. Overwhelmed, he breaks down. Yeri then gives him blunt advice. Someone like Kyo, with no connections or protection, should attach himself to a powerful person. He suggests Kyo become the lover of the strongest inmate, make a deal using anything except his body if possible, and have that person mark him. That way, no one else would dare touch him, and he could survive in peace. Kyo hesitates, questioning what marking really means. But Yeri dismisses his concerns, telling him not to believe in naive ideas about love. He explains that even a temporary mark, just enough to signal ownership, would be enough to keep others away. Yeri continues, saying that even if the mark leaves a visible trace, he can get some bandages from the guards so Kyo can cover it up. Kyo hesitates and asks what he's supposed to do. If not use his body, then what does he have to bargain with? He has no money, and even his defense attorney is just a public lawyer. Yeri thinks to himself that he doesn't care about such details. Then, raising his voice, he says bluntly that it's none of his concern. He's already helped as much as he's willing to. He tells Kyo to go to sleep, adding that Kyo had distracted him so much earlier that he ended up wasting all his energy. With that, Yeri turns over and falls asleep. Kyo watches him for a while, then slowly moves closer, thinking that even if it's only temporary, Yeri is the only person he can rely on right now. Just as he's about to speak, Yeri suddenly opens his eyes and asks what he wants. Kyo hesitates, trying to bring up the topic, but Yeri cuts him off, already guessing his intention. He calls him pathetic, realizing that Kyo is about to ask him to be the one to mark him. Kyo admits that he doesn't know anyone else. In his thoughts, he reasons that Yeri doesn't seem to be plotting anything against him, even if he's a bit intimidating. It doesn't seem like Yeri has any real interest in him, and even a small chance of help is better than nothing. He asks if he's asking for too much. Yeri pauses, then asks if Kyo is really sure. He warns that things might not stop at just a bite, but if Kyo has the courage, he should come closer and offer his neck. Kyo moves beside him and lies down. Yeri adjusts his position, telling him how to do it properly. Flustered and unsure, Kyo wonders if he's making the right decision, but resolves to go through with it no matter what. He tells Yeri that he can't back out now. Yeri then bites into Kyo's neck. Afterward he lingers, brushing over the spot, which startles Kyo and makes him pull away abruptly. Both of them end up flushed with embarrassment. Yeri casually says that it should be enough, and tells him to sleep. Kyo lies there, overwhelmed, thinking about how intense the sensation was, far stronger than anything he felt earlier. It unsettles him, and eventually, he falls asleep. Meanwhile, Yeri remains awake, thinking that things have already gone too far and will only become more difficult from here on. The scene then shifts to the past. In another prison, a young man visits Yeri. He assures him that the guards can't overhear them and hands him a photograph of Kyo. He says he has heard many rumors about Yeri addressing him as Mr. Lee and has come with a request. He tells Yeri to transfer to another prison. Find this person, and kill him brutally. The scene shifts again to Kyo's lawyer speaking with the jailer. The lawyer says that leaving Kyo alone would raise suspicion. The jailer agrees, explaining that the situation is the result of a temporary arrangement ordered by someone within the Department of Justice, specifically instructing that a certain inmate be placed in Kyo's cell. The lawyer asks about this person, and the jailer explains that his name is Lee Yeri, a well-built prisoner who is now labeled a murderer, though he was once a civil servant. The jailer adds that he plans to investigate Yari's past further, as the order came from someone of even higher authority within the system. The lawyer realizes that this means Yeri already knows what he's supposed to do upon arrival. The jailer confirms that Yeri's role is to protect Kyo, although he wasn't aware of it at first. He later received suppressants, which likely clarified the situation for him. The lawyer says that's reassuring, though he suspects the Department of Justice may be trying to cover up their own mistakes. The jailer adds that the minister himself has sought his help before. In truth, he believes Kyo is fortunate being a weak Omega. He likely won't be kept in prison for long. The lawyer responds that he understands and will visit Kyo daily. If anything goes wrong, it would reflect poorly on him. The scene shifts again. Other prisoners are seen watching Kyo and Yeri from a distance, whispering among themselves. One wonders if Kyo has really been marked. Another says it certainly looks that way, having observed them for a week, and suggests confirming it directly. The first refuses, saying it should be the other's job. The second prisoner replies that just one look at Yeri is enough. He can tell he's a killer. There's no way anyone would dare touch his Omega. His gaze alone feels deadly. At that moment, a van arrives carrying a new prisoner. Kyo notices him. Yeri interrupts, telling Kyo to stop staring and ignore whatever nonsense the others are saying. Kyo recalls hearing that Yeri is known as the man with dangerous eyes. Yeri notices his curiosity and teases him, asking if he wants to find out whether the rumors are true. He steps closer, saying he can teach him. Embarrassed, Kyo asks him to keep some distance. Yeri questions why he should, especially after Kyo was the one who approached him before. He warns him not to provoke him, reminding him that Kyo has nothing here. While he at least has small privileges, even something as trivial as candy. He casually licks a lollipop as he speaks. Seeing this triggers Kyo's memory of the night Yeri bit him, making him blush again. He nervously asks Yeri to step back, worried about being seen. Yeri smirks and asks if that means he should just kiss him right there instead, saying he was going to anyway. He leans in, but just then, a guard interrupts, ordering everyone inside. Both of them are startled, and Yeri quickly pulls away, wondering what he was about to do. Kyo avoids his gaze, while Yeri thinks to himself that this wasn't part of his plan. He needs to keep his distance, especially since he can't think clearly around him. Time passes slowly in the prison. The atmosphere feels unstable. Later, in the cafeteria, Kyo is eating with Yeri when he notices the new prisoner staring at him and smiling. The scene shifts to the shower area. As Kyo approaches, he sees a group of prisoners harassing another inmate. The sight shocks him. Suddenly Yeri appears behind him, covering his eyes and saying he's been looking for him. He scolds the others for not even closing the door. One of the prisoners jokes that they thought Kyo might want to join in. Disturbed, Kyo runs away, while Yeri tells them to stop teasing him. As Kyo moves away, he wonders what he should do, whether he should report this to the guards. He notices Yeri following him and reflects that although Yeri only seems to be pretending to protect him, he still feels less anxious when he's around. Soon after, Kyo is shown running again, chased by several prisoners who want to check his mark. In his panic, he enters a room where two inmates are being intimate, which shocks him even more. Flustered, he quickly shuts the door and steps back out. Blushing, the pursuing prisoners catch up to him, but just as they're about to grab him, Yeri appears. He asks why Kyo can't just stay with him quietly, then warns the others that he already told them not to touch his mate. Hearing the word mate makes Kyo blush again. The other prisoners apologize and leave. Yeri then turns to Kyo and tells him to come along, saying they need to submit an application. Kyo wonders if Yeri just helped him again and quickly follows, asking him not to leave him alone. Yeri teases him, asking if he was going to check on the prisoner he saw earlier in the bathroom. Kyo is surprised that he knows. Yeri replies that it's obvious and questions whether Kyo really has the time to worry about others right now. Kyo thinks that approaching Yeri isn't easy, which is why he ended up going alone. Yet just moments ago Yeri had called him his mate. As they step outside, Kyo asks why they left if they were supposed to submit something. Yori admits that constantly having to follow Kyo around is irritating, but what bothers him more is not knowing where Kyo is. He then says he's going to open Kyo's eyes to reality. Pointing ahead, he tells him to look carefully. Kyo recognizes the same prisoner from the shower. Yeri asks if Kyo has met him before and warns him not to act recklessly. Even if the man seems like a victim, it doesn't mean helping him would bring any benefit. He describes him as a dog with the claws of a wolf, one of the most dangerous people in the prison. He explains that the earlier situation was likely a setup those prisoners planned to attack. That man is one of the most powerful inmates, and there may be some kind of agreement between them. Yeri goes on to explain that the prison functions like a small society where power and hierarchy dominate. Even without freedom, influence still exists. Countless deals are made in secret, and knowing someone's secrets can determine their fate. He adds that even the relationship between him and Kyo is a kind of agreement. Kyo realizes that Yeri is right. This place really is like a small, controlled society. Just then, Kyo notices the new prisoner again. The man smiles at him, making Kyo wonder if he's being mocked. Yeri notices as well and asks who he is, then suggests they leave. Soon after, guards arrive to call Kyo. His lawyer is here to see him. When Kyo meets his lawyer, the man greets him, noting that it's been about a month since they last met and asking how he's been. Kyo replies that he's doing fine. The lawyer asks about his new cellmate. Kyo says he seems like a good person and always protects him, though internally. Kyo hesitates, unsure of what to truly make of Yeri. Kyo hadn't spoken to him for a month, ever since that joke about kissing. The whole thing still felt strange to him. Meanwhile, the lawyer comments that it seems the man treats Kyo well, which gives him some relief. Kyo replies that, yes, he actually is pretty kind. But deep down, Kyo thinks the complete opposite. He feels suffocated there, nervous every single day. Back in the cell, Yeri is doing push-ups while thinking about the man who ordered him to kill Kyo. After finishing his workout, he thinks to himself that if he has to kill him brutally, he'll need to make it look like a suicide. He wonders what kind of trouble that kid could possibly have caused for someone to want him dead. Just then, someone outside remarks that the first thing Yeri thinks about after waking up is that Omega. Yeri asks who said that, and the new prisoner with glasses appears. Yeri walks over and asks who he is, mentioning that he's noticed him hanging around. The prisoner introduces himself as Pigeon. He explains that he's like a courier who can bring anything into the prison, along with useful information, including information about Yeri himself, such as the real reason behind inmate 18,818's transfer there. Yeri takes the cigarette Pigeon offers and dismisses his words as nonsense, but Pigeon insists he's serious and says information always comes with a price. Yeri pays him for the cigarette, and Pigeon thanks him for the business, saying he looks forward to future deals. Before leaving, Pigeon warns him that as long as he's around, things won't go according to plan, and that he'll be keeping an eye on Yeri's little chick. The scene then shifts to the lawyer preparing Kyo for court. He explains that the first hearing will move quickly and mostly involve confirming basic information, like his name, age, and family details. After that, they'll reject the prosecution's indictment, and the real battle will begin during the second hearing. All of the victims were alphas with political ambitions, and the prosecution plans to bring in people who know Kyo to testify that he hates alpha. Later, lying on his bed, Kyo tries to reassure himself. The lawyer said things would be fine as long as they stuck to their story, and there's no actual evidence against him. Still, he can't believe all the victims were politically connected. He doesn't even know who they really were. Elsewhere, prisoners are playing cards when one of the bosses notices Yeri sitting alone and asks where his precious Omega is. Another prisoner mentions hearing that the Omega had to go to court today. Yeri silently watches them, thinking that inmate 2089 was supposed to keep an eye on the kid. He wonders if they know he's actually a hit. That means he'll need to deal with Kyo quickly, but moving too fast could look suspicious. On top of that, the client specifically requested a brutal death. Yari admits to himself that he never expected the kid might actually be innocent, and that's why he started acting emotionally. Now, he decides it's time to completely win Kyo over before finishing the job. Meanwhile, the prison boss asks Pigeon if he's sure Yeri hasn't marked the Omega yet. Pigeon confirms that they still haven't slept together, and that the mark is fake. He even offers more information about why inmate 18,818 is there. According to Pigeon, Yeri is actually a serial killer who used to be a policeman. He would seduce Omegas, get them pregnant, and kill them once the pregnancy was confirmed. Since that was his pattern, Pigeon claims it proves Yeri hasn't touched Kyo yet because once Yeri chooses a target, he eventually reveals his true nature before striking. Later, Yeri watches Kyo quietly and remembers the lawyer telling him not to make any statements. Tossing Kyo a piece of chicken, he tells him that a trial is just a trial and not a reason to skip dinner. Kyo is irritated because Yeri ignored him all morning, yet now suddenly acts concerned about him. When Kyo tries to refuse the food, his stomach growls loudly, embarrassing him. Yeri calls him a headache and tells him to just eat so he can stop worrying about it. As Kyo opens the food, he thinks about how strangely inconsistent Yeri is. One moment frightening and distant, the next caring and attentive. He concludes that Yeri has probably always been weird. Watching him eat, Yeri internally jokes that the chick is eating chicken. After dinner, Kyo goes to wash his hands, when Yeri suddenly grabs him and asks if he wants to take a shower now that he's eaten. Holding his hand, he starts leading him toward the shower room. Confused, Kyo wonders why Yeri is suddenly acting this way. Near the showers, Yeri explains that since this is a special favor, he won't be able to stand guard outside like before, but promises not to look at him. Kyo realizes Yeri had been joking earlier about helping him shower. Yeri teasingly asks if he shouldn't at least get a thank you. Kyo starts to respond, then insists he never asked for any of this. Yeri sarcastically thanks himself instead, and hurries him inside, reminding him they need to finish before roll call. Inside, Yeri locks the door and tells Kyo to take off his clothes because they need to be quick and can't turn the lights on. As Kyo undresses, he wonders if this is one of the secrets Yari mentioned before. While Kyo showers, Yari casually asks how the hearing went. He jokes that the courtroom couldn't possibly have been warm and welcoming for someone accused of murdering several elf. He asks whether Kyo stayed quiet and continued insisting he was innocent. Yuri also mentions hearing that all the victims were future politicians, meaning the case is obviously Then, suddenly Kyo coldly says that all alphas deserve to die. Shocked, Yari asks what he means. Kyo repeats himself more angrily, shouting that every single alpha should die. At that moment, footsteps echo outside the shower room. Yeri quickly covers Kyo's mouth to silence him, but Kyo continues making noise. To stop him, Yari suddenly kisses him. Outside, a guard hears the sounds and approaches to inspect the shower room, but seeing the door locked, he leaves. Inside, Yeri continues kissing Kyo, and Kyo slowly starts responding to it. When a drop of water hits Kyo's face, he snaps back to reality and pushes Yeri away. Yeri teasingly asks if that was his first kiss. Embarrassed, Kyo immediately denies it while internally panicking over how obvious he must have looked. Yeri smirks and says maybe he's just such a good kisser that he got Kyo excited. Kyo tells him to stay away, but Yeri reassures him that he won't do anything and that the situation simply couldn't be avoided. Still, he points out there's no reason for Kyo to avoid looking him in the eyes, and notices that Kyo is blushing again. He moves closer and jokes that if Kyo keeps reacting like that, he might genuinely get excited himself. Kyo tells him to stop teasing him, but Yeri says his reactions are just too innocent and amusing. Then, seeing Kyo's wet body, even Yari begins blushing and loses his composure for a moment. Shocked by this reaction, Kyo tries to run away, but Yeri catches him. Yeri reminds him that he said he wouldn't do anything but admits he's changed his mind. He repeats the warning he gave before, never trust anyone in this prison. Then he kisses Kyo again. Kyo protests and says he doesn't want this, but Yeri keeps kissing him. Dizzy and overwhelmed, Kyo collapses to the floor. Yeri notices how affected he is and starts removing his clothes. Kyo's thoughts become hazy. His head feels like it's floating, and Yeri's scent is intoxicating. Even though he's not in heat, his body feels unbearably warm. He can't understand why he can't push Yeri away despite knowing he's an alpha. Instead, Kyo ends up clinging to him, and the two become intimate. The next morning, Yeri watches Kyo sleeping and wonders if he's alright. He admits to himself that nothing is going according to plan. Originally, he only intended to gain Kyo's trust, but things spiraled out of control. Still, he convinces himself that maybe this could become an effective way to completely break Kyo emotionally. At the same time, Kyo secretly glances at Yeri while blushing. He can't believe what happened the previous night. He thought he'd never be able to sleep afterward, yet his body relaxed so completely that he passed out immediately. Ashamed, he wonders if he completely lost his mind. Everything had felt so intense, and he had let himself act recklessly. Then he remembers his past specifically, his father trying to sell him, an Omega, to someone else. The memory overwhelms him, and he begins trembling and crying. Seeing this, Yeri approaches him gently and asks, "What's wrong?" He touches Kyo's face and asks if he isn't feeling well. Internally, Yeri is confused because Kyo usually recoils before he can even touch him, but now he seems so lost that he doesn't even notice the contact. When Yeri lifts Kyo's face, he notices Kyo biting his own lips and asks, "What are you doing?" Yari asks Kyo what happened to him and warns that if the guards see him like this, they'll blame him for it. Kyo finally snaps back to his senses and wipes away his tears, wondering if he had blacked out for a moment. He quickly tells Yari that it's nothing, but Yeri raises his voice, asking how something that made him cry in pain could possibly be nothing. Before the conversation can continue, the guards arrive for roll call. They announce that their requested programs have been approved. Prisoner 7337 is assigned to report to the library, while inmate 18818 receives a different assignment. Even then, Yeri can't stop worrying about Kyo. The scene shifts to Kyo working in the library. Internally, he feels relieved that he'll finally get some time away from Yeri, but the moment he thinks about being alone, memories of the previous night flood back into his mind, making him blush uncontrollably. He admits to himself that he completely lost control that night. In fact, part of him had wanted even more. That realization disgusts him, making him feel as though he's some kind of disgrace. Suddenly, Yeri appears behind him and teasingly comments that their little chick really is a mess. He adds that he's a mess too, and jokes that this entire prison is basically a showcase of broken people. Kyo asks how Yari figured him out so quickly. Yeri points at his face and says it was obvious. Since he's older, he immediately recognized the signs. He remarks that Kyo has a pretty face, but his behavior reveals far more than he realizes. Embarrassed, Kyo repeats the phrase "pretty face" under his breath while blushing. Yeri brushes it off, saying anyone could see it anyway. Then, since he's finally free, he suggests they talk about what happened the previous night. Panicking, Kyo quickly walks away, insisting there's nothing to discuss. Watching him flee, Yeri thinks to himself how fun it is to tease him. Frustrated, Kyo throws a book at Yeri and tells him to stop following him and leave. The book lands on Yeri's foot, making Kyo immediately worry if he's hurt. But Yeri smirks and exaggerates the injury dramatically, loudly pretending to be in pain so everyone will notice. Alarmed, Kyo rushes over and covers Yeri's mouth to silence him. Inside, he panics, unsure whether he should move his hand away because doing so would make his feelings too obvious. Yeri takes advantage of the moment by grabbing Kyo's hand and kissing his palm. Then he slowly licks it as well. Shocked and flustered, Kyo jerks his hand back and tells him to stop before trying to leave again. Yeri stops him and warns that if Kyo keeps running away from him, he might not bite his neck tonight. Hearing that instantly freezes Kyo in place, making him realize Yeri has completely figured him out. While Kyo blushes furiously, Yeri reminds him that there was actually something he wanted to ask about last night. Nervously, Kyo bites his lip, causing Yeri to shout at him to stop doing that. Kyo assumes Yeri wants to talk about what happened between them, but Yeri clarifies that he meant Kyo's hatred toward Alpha. Confused and embarrassed, Kyo pushes him away and tells him to speak properly if that's what he wants to discuss. Instead of answering, Yeri steps closer and kisses him again. This time, Kyo slowly melts into the kiss and starts enjoying it as well. While they're kissing, Kyo accidentally bumps into a bookshelf, causing books to fall loudly onto the floor. Hearing the noise, a guard approaches and asks what's going on. At the same moment, Pigeon also arrives at the library. The guard questions why he's there, and Pigeon casually replies that he came to borrow a book. Suspicious, the guard says he heard strange noises and wants to check. Inside, after the kiss ends, both Yeri and Kyo are left blushing. Yeri calmly walks out and explains that he simply dropped some books by accident. That's when he notices Pigeon standing there. Meanwhile, Kyo quickly escapes from the library. As he passes by, Pigeon catches a familiar scent coming from him, the same scent he had noticed before. Immediately, he realizes that Yeri and Kyo have already become intimate. The scene then shifts to an officer explaining that the employee responsible for the mistakes in Kyo's paperwork is away on a business trip. The lawyer isn't happy to hear that, especially since the second hearing is only 2 days away. Still, he admits that when he met Kyo earlier, he seemed to be doing relatively well. The officer mentions that Kyo has been working in the library as part of a new program. The lawyer then asks about Yuri and whether he also signed up for a program. The officer confirms that he did, and says he's currently in the infirmary. The lawyer absent-mindedly spins a ring on his finger while thinking deeply. Later, Kyo is shown writing an apology letter. However, because of pain in his back, he keeps making mistakes and becomes increasingly frustrated. He reflects on how strange his life has become over the past few days. It feels as though he's simply being swept away by a storm without any control. The hatred he once felt so strongly toward Alpha seems to be disappearing. Every night and every morning when he's with Yeri, things inevitably turn chaotic and intimate. Slowly, Kyo realizes he's becoming addicted to those dirty acts he once despised. Meanwhile, Yeri is talking to someone on the phone in a low voice. He says he's doing his best, but because the client requested a truly brutal death, he first needs to completely gain Kyo's trust. Behind him, Pigeon quietly approaches while overhearing the conversation. Yeri continues, saying that everything is going according to plan before ending the call. Right after that, Pigeon picks up the nearby phone and begins speaking as well. Just as Yeri is about to leave, he overhears Pigeon mentioning that he's keeping a close eye on their little Omega. Hearing this, Yeri stops in place. Pigeon continues, saying they may need to act quickly because something about the Omega has started changing. He also reveals that someone assigned to the infirmary has been providing Kyo with extremely powerful blockers. The story then shifts to the laundry room, where Kyo and Yari are shown sharing another intimate moment. Later, they sit together on a bench while Yeri smokes. Pigeon approaches them and casually remarks that he had gone to do laundry earlier, but the entire room was overflowing with a strong scent. Hearing this makes Kyo blush instantly. Yeri immediately covers Kyo's ears and tells Pigeon to watch his mouth in front of the baby. Pigeon is confused by how protective Yeri is acting, but continues anyway, warning them that the pheromone scent was so thick that they need to be more careful. At the same time, Yeri suddenly notices Kyo's scent again and internally curses. Even after taking those new pills, Kyo's scent is still driving him insane. Normally, he's able to resist it, but now he's struggling. Kyo pulls himself away from Yeri, conflicted because the very person warning him about danger is the one he keeps staying close to. Then Pigeon turns to Kyo directly and tells him that if anything ever happens, he should come to him because he'll protect him. Kyo asks who he really is. Pigeon replies that he's someone capable of bringing him anything he wants inside this prison, and also someone who knows every secret hidden there. Yuri immediately steps between them and tells Pigeon to stop, calling him nothing more than a stupid pigeon. Kyo quietly wonders why he's even called Pigeon in the first place. Pigeon smirks and asks why Yari is getting so defensive. He wonders if Yari is nervous because Pigeon already knows why he came to this prison. Confused, Kyo asks what Yari is supposedly here to do. Pigeon answers by saying that he's the only one who can truly protect Kyo. Then he reveals that he knows Kyo's secrets to even what Kyo's father did to him in the past. Hearing this leaves Kyo completely shocked. Before anything else can be said, an announcement calls Kyo to the warden's office. He gets up to leave, but before he can walk away, Pigeon calls after him. Han Kyo, that's your name, right? You're not so weak that you need someone like him to protect you, are you? Pigeon tells Kyo that he doesn't need a worthless traitor like Yari to protect him. He reminds Kyo that Yari is still an alpha, carrying the same filthy blood as Kyo's father. At that moment, Yari grabs Kyo's hand, but Kyo immediately pulls away and says he can walk by himself. He adds that he could simply report everything to the warden before leaving. Once Kyo is gone, Yari angrily snaps at Pigeon, calling him a piece of trash and pointing out that he's an alpha too. Pigeon calmly replies that, unlike Yari, he isn't the kind of alpha who murders helpless Omega. Yari grabs him by the collar and accuses him of acting like he knows everything. He demands to know who he really is. Pigeon answers that he's just a messenger. Yari coldly asks if Pigeon seriously thinks he'll get a share of his little chick. Pigeon smirks and repeats the phrase mockingly, saying Yari has already lost. He reminds Yari that he was supposed to come here as a hit. Pigeon admits that at first he wasn't interested in Kyo at all, but seeing how obsessed Yari has become has made him curious. He wonders what exactly Kyo offered that could make a heartless killer completely lose his judgment. He jokingly says that delicious things are meant to be shared. Yari snatches the cigarette pack from Pigeon's hand and replies that he's wrong. Delicious things aren't meant to be shared. They're meant to be kept for yourself. He calls Kyo a meal meant only for him and warns Pigeon to stay away because he won't leave even a single bone behind. Pigeon casually responds that it's fine anyway, since threesomes were never really his taste. Later, an officer apologizes to Kyo for the delay in his transfer. He explains that Kyo's lawyer, Mr. Shin, recommended stronger blockers for him. According to the officer, these new suppressants are considered revolutionary because of how effectively they control the hormonal system. He tells Kyo to take care of himself and not forget to use them. Back in the library, Kyo arranges books while thinking about the previous night. He tells himself that nothing happened only because of the pills, but then catches himself thinking as though he had actually been expecting something to happen. That's when he notices a book Pigeon had been reading. The title is The Story of a Father Who Devoured His Own Son. Inside the book, Kyo finds a note. When he unfolds it, it reads, "Your father devoured your mother too. Then he tried to devour you, didn't he?" Reading the note causes Kyo to start trembling violently. The story flashes back to Kyo's childhood. He's sitting in his room while outside. His father speaks on the phone with someone, promising that his son is young and capable of satisfying wealthy clients' requests, as long as the money is transferred first. Kyo quietly listens from behind the door. Another man hesitates, asking whether his father is truly sure about this. He warns that Kyo's mother would never accept her son being sold. Kyo's father dismisses the concern coldly, saying his wife already knows what kind of business they're involved in. He complains that keeping Kyo around like some treasured possession is a waste. Then he checks the time and remarks that the clients still won't arrive for a while. Inside the room, Kyo is horrified. He remembers how they told him to wait quietly and promised to let him see his mother, making him realize they had been lying the entire time. Outside, the other man desperately tries to stop Kyo's father, but his father pushes him aside and declares that he's simply going to taste what belongs to him. He even admits that he would have done it earlier if Kyo's mother hadn't interfered before. Panicking, Kyo desperately searches for an escape route. He tears apart a bed sheet and wraps the fabric around his hands, preparing to defend himself by attacking his father's neck if necessary. When his father enters the room and sees him, he mocks him for listening in again. Laughing, he asks if Kyo plans to kill him with that pathetic weapon, saying he truly resembles his mother. He chillingly says he's ready to play, adding that frightened resistance only suits his tastes more. Kyo begs him to stay away, but his father approaches anyway. He calmly says that at first it will feel scary, but eventually Kyo will cry, cling to him, and enjoy it. Back in the present, Yari is reading Kyo's apology letter, which contains details about everything his father did to him. Shocked, Yari mutters about who writes an apology letter like this, but internally, he realizes it finally explains why Kyo hates Alpha so deeply. The story then returns briefly to the man who hired Yari tearfully. He says Kyo murdered his husband, a man who had been on the verge of becoming a leading congressional candidate and was admired by everyone. The ring on his finger matches the one worn by Kyo's lawyer, revealing a connection between them. Meanwhile, Pigeon approaches Kyo, who is hyperventilating from shock. Pigeon gently tells him to trust him and says he'll hold him tightly for a few minutes to help him calm down. He insists it's only a treatment to help him relax and claims someone sent him there, specifically to help him, possibly even Kyo's mother. Kyo collapses to the ground. As Pigeon approaches, Kyo once again wonders whether this person is a dog trying to help him or a wolf trying to destroy him. Kyo asks how Pigeon even knows what happened to him. Pigeon notices he's having a panic attack and suggests he may need medication. He explains that he also works in the infirmary, on the opposite shift from the other guy. Kyo thinks to himself that Yari may claim to care about his safety, but right now Pigeon is the only one truly helping him. Still, Kyo backs away and tells him not to touch him. Pigeon immediately apologizes, realizing he shouldn't have grabbed him during a panic attack. The story shifts again to the grieving man from the past, crying as he explains that his husband was about to become Congress's leading candidate and was admired by everyone. At the same time, after reading Kyo's letter, Yari realizes that Kyo has already been through hell. If things were truly that terrible, he can understand why Kyo might have killed Alpha. Back in the library, Pigeon places a hand on Kyo's shoulder and tells him someone genuinely needs him, especially if he's capable of taking revenge on his father. Confused, Kyo asks what he means and who he really is. Pigeon says Kyo doesn't look well and insists on treating him first. He hugs Kyo and begins releasing his pheromones, but the scent immediately causes Kyo to hallucinate his father's face. Terrified, he violently pushes Pigeon away and runs. Elsewhere, a doctor wonders where inmate 18,818 Yari is supposed to be, since he should already be on duty. At the same time, Yari is secretly speaking on the phone with the man who hired him to kill Kyo, whom we now know as the Widow. Yari apologizes for calling suddenly and explains that he borrowed the phone from someone he knows. He asks the Widow for records from Kyo's first trial and the case files because he wants to understand how Kyo selected his victims. The Widow agrees to get the files but questions why Yari suddenly needs them. He asks whether the plan has changed. Yari says no, he simply wants to understand Kyo's weaknesses better. After the call ends, another mysterious man comments that apparently even a hungry wolf needs a reason to hunt. He remarks that things are becoming very interesting. After hanging up, Yeri curses under his breath because even the blockers no longer seem effective. Reading Kyo's apology letter almost feels like Kyo unconsciously confessing his crimes. At the same time, Yeri keeps thinking about the widow's words that something about all this feels wrong. Suddenly, someone pounds on the door and calls Yeri outside. He returns the phone to a guard, while Pigeon exits another room, holding a phone of his own. The moment they see each other, both freeze in surprise. Yeri immediately realizes Pigeon was probably calling someone too, while Pigeon understands that Yeri must have been speaking to his client. As Yeri walks away, Pigeon teasingly asks what would happen if someone stole the world's tastiest thing directly from another person's lips. At that moment, Yeri notices Kyo's scent lingering all over Pigeon. Before he can react further, a doctor arrives and scolds Yeri for skipping duty. That evening, Kyo returns to his room thinking about Pigeon. He wonders just how many enemies his father could possibly have. Looking at his apology letter, he questions how someone could use him for revenge against that monster, and how he could possibly help defeat him. Then Kyo quietly whispers that his father deserves to die. Suddenly, Yeri speaks from behind him, asking who Kyo plans to kill now. He teases him for forgetting about dinner because his target must be so important. Startled, Kyo quickly hides the letter and denies everything. Yeri narrows his eyes, and asks if the target is him. Kyo insists it isn't. Yeri suddenly grabs Kyo by the collar and smells him closely. Internally, he instantly recognizes the scent as Pigeon's. Kyo pulls away and awkwardly suggests they just go eat. But inside, Yeri is furious. He's already irritated by Pigeon, and now Kyo has returned covered in that man's scent. Kyo is equally confused because he pushed Pigeon away immediately, yet somehow the scent still remained on him. He wonders if Yeri has simply become overly sensitive. Yeri places a hand on Kyo's shoulder and warns him not to ignore serious questions. He points out that Kyo always claimed to hate all alphas, yet he allowed someone besides Yeri to get close to him. Then he coldly promises that tonight, Kyo will explain everything in detail. That night, after lights out, everyone goes to sleep, but Yeri quietly gets out of bed while Kyo trembles nervously. Yeri grabs him by the collar and asks whether he's forgotten his warning. After smelling him again and finding Pigeon's scent still lingering, Yeri bites Kyo's neck and demands to know what inmate 2089 did to him. Kyo insists nothing happened. Yeri asks why Kyo avoided him throughout dinner if that's true. Internally, Kyo thinks he only avoided him because he didn't want Yeri misunderstanding things. Yeri sarcastically suggests Kyo is angry because Yeri stopped paying attention to him for a few nights. Kyo desperately thinks he's done nothing wrong, yet for some reason he can't get the words out. When Kyo still doesn't answer properly, Yeri accuses him of deliberately provoking him. Finally frustrated, Kyo snaps and says that whatever he does with inmate 2089 shouldn't matter to Yeri anyway. Hearing that, Yeri's expression darkens. Kyo tries to continue speaking, but Yeri cuts him off by kissing him. After pulling away, Yeri removes his shirt and admits that he's not someone who usually puts in extra effort for others, but he's willing to make a small exception for Kyo. Then he smirks and tells him that it's time for punishment. Even so, he promises he'll go easy on him because technically, Kyo never truly confessed to anything. Yeri simply isn't satisfied with his answers. The two then spend the night together intimately. The scene shifts to a man working in an office, the same man who had sent Yeri to the prison to kill Kyo. He studies a document before calling his assistant. The assistant asks what he needs, and the man replies, "When is the second trial for our case? Arrange a prison visit for me before then." Meanwhile, in another room, Yeri and Kyo are shown lying naked together. Yeri wakes up when he hears guards outside conducting roll call. He quickly gets up, covers Kyo with a sheet, and starts putting on his clothes. Afterward, he opens the windows to let the scent in the room escape. When the guards enter for inspection, they immediately notice the state of the cell and ask what happened there. Yeri casually responds, "Well, officers, inmate 7337 was really sick all night. I think he caught a terrible cold." The guard suggests taking Kyo to the infirmary for a checkup, but Yeri quickly refuses. He explains that he volunteers at the infirmary anyway, so he'll personally take Kyo there after roll call. Then, lowering his tone, he hints that filing an official report could create unnecessary trouble if Kyo's condition worsened later. One guard agrees, saying they can keep an eye on him as long as he stays in the cell. Before leaving, the guard reminds Yeri not to forget to take him to the infirmary, and Yeri assures him he will. As soon as the guards leave, Yeri lets out a relieved sigh. He pinches Kyo's cheeks and says, "You punk, you don't even have to do anything. Just your existence alone causes problems." Then he gently runs his fingers through Kyo's hair and murmurs, "You're really pretty." Leaning closer, he kisses him before quietly adding, "So I guess I'll have to kill this little troublemaker." The scene changes to Kyo meeting with his lawyer. The lawyer informs him that the second trial is approaching, and there's still a lot they need to prepare. He explains that he has reviewed the witness list the opposing side plans to call. However, Kyo seems distracted and lost in thought. The lawyer notices and asks if he's all right, mentioning that he just came back from the infirmary. Startled, Kyo quickly says he's fine, and claims he only has a slight cold. The lawyer suggests postponing the trial if he isn't feeling well, saying they would only need a doctor's note. He then asks if the new medication could be causing side effects. Kyo instead asks whether delaying the trial would actually benefit them. The lawyer is surprised and asks if Kyo doesn't want to get out of prison as soon as possible. Kyo clarifies that isn't what he meant. He's simply worried because the prosecution seems thoroughly prepared, while they still have very little evidence in their favor. The lawyer admits that's true. He recalls Kyo explaining that after running away, he lived completely alone and rarely went outside. Because of that, the prosecution has many witnesses, especially since Kyo's father was not only a dominant alpha but also an active criminal. Later, the lawyer is seen speaking with an officer. He mentions that Kyo didn't seem normal today and wonders if the medication could be causing side effects. The officer dismisses the idea, explaining that the entire selling point of the new drug is that it supposedly has none. That's why politicians are fighting over it. The lawyer explains that the drug, commonly called equality, is officially known as so far, no side effects have been reported. If an alpha or omega takes it for an extended period, it stabilizes their hormones to resemble those of a beta. The officer comments that Congress seems determined to create a society where alphas and omegas no longer exist separately, only one equal society. The lawyer replies that until the bill officially passes, they're only authorized to prescribe the medication for short-term use. The officer admits he personally dislikes the idea, saying he doesn't want politics interfering with how prisons are run. He then asks when the Ministry of Justice employees will return, since they're taking a long time. The lawyer responds that correcting the entire mess will take time, because they'll need to secretly replace a large number of documents. The scene shifts again to Kyo resting in the infirmary. The doctor tells him that his fever has gone down, though he'll still send medicine through the guards just to be safe. After the doctor leaves, Kyo quietly reflects that he already feels much better, and wonders if staying there is really the right choice. At that moment, Yeri arrives carrying Kyo's dinner. The doctor notices Yeri and comments that inmate 1818 seems unusually devoted to taking care of 7,337. He even changed shifts with inmate 2089 just so he could stay by Kyo's side. Hearing this, Yeri silently thinks to himself that Kyo is still there. The doctor tells Yeri to make sure Kyo eats and takes his medicine before the guards arrive for the final roll call. After saying they'll meet again tomorrow, the doctor leaves. Meanwhile, Kyo, embarrassed, hides under the blanket. Yeri looks at him and says, "Don't you think you can sit up now? I heard you met your lawyer this afternoon." Kyo sits up and admits it's true. Yeri hands him a spoon and tells him to hurry up and finish eating. He teasingly adds that if Kyo refuses, he'll hold him like a baby and feed him himself. Embarrassed, Kyo blushes and says he can eat on his own. Yeri smirks and asks why he's acting shy, when there's nothing left for either of them to hide after last night. He jokingly remarks that Kyo had so much fun he ended up sick. Kyo immediately snaps at him, demanding to know what he means by that. Yeri casually replies that Kyo was the one clinging to him and begging him not to stop. Mortified, Kyo yells at him to shut up and internally wishes he could disappear from embarrassment. Later, back in the cell, Yeri notices Kyo trembling from the cold. He moves closer and tells him he still hasn't fully recovered and probably only felt better because of the medicine. Yeri says he'll hold him while they sleep tonight, reminding him that Kyo clung to him for warmth the previous night as well. He wraps Kyo up carefully before lying down beside him. As Yeri watches him, he thinks about how unbelievably attractive Kyo still looks despite being weak and sick. He gently kisses Kyo on the forehead and quietly admits that, monster or not, he's not cruel enough to take advantage of a sick kid. Being close to Yeri makes Kyo feel unexpectedly warm and safe. That night, Kyo dreams about being sick and alone, taking medicine while thinking about his mother. Suddenly, a white wolf appears before him. Startled, Kyo asks whether it's a dog or actually a wolf. The wolf approaches him calmly, sniffing and licking him affectionately. Realizing the creature means no harm, Kyo hugs it and says it's trying to comfort him instead. In reality, still half asleep, Kyo mistakes Yeri for the wolf and starts mumbling in his sleep. He softly says that it hasn't been long since his mother died. Yeri realizes Kyo is sleep-talking and listens quietly as Kyo continues. Kyo reveals that after years of isolation, he finally went to his father's hotel one day, only to discover the man never intended to treat him like a son. Instead, his father planned to sell him. His mother had known about it all along and desperately tried to stop it, but nothing worked. Kyo confesses that he was nearly assaulted that night before one of his father's men interrupted, informing his father that Kyo's mother had secretly come to the hotel and was causing a scene downstairs. Kyo remembers how his mother always told him that if he ever got a chance to escape, he should run without looking back. In the end, he realized she had intentionally gone to the hotel that night and sacrificed herself just to buy him enough time to escape. He admits that he's exhausted from living this way, as though life itself has been punishing him. Even after everything happened, he never cried, he simply kept running and hiding. Looking back, he now understands how desperately his mother wanted to protect him, even though she always spoke coldly and never openly showed it. He also realizes she herself had suffered terribly at the hands of his father, and that was how he was born. Even after revealing all of this in his sleep, Kyo remains asleep the entire time, while Yeri silently listens to everything. When Yeri tries to move away, Kyo instinctively grabs him and murmurs, "Doggy, don't go." Shocked, Yeri stares at him in disbelief. Kyo continues mumbling that he's warm. Amused, Yeri thinks Kyo's sleep-talking is on another level entirely. He hugs him back gently, kisses his forehead, and quietly asks whether he's really asleep or just pretending. Yeri admits that maybe he really is a monster, but after hearing Kyo's story, he finds himself unable to stay indifferent anymore. He reflects that everyone was once precious to someone, the apple of their mother's eye, but Kyo never had the chance to feel truly cherished by anyone. For the first time, Yeri feels conflicted. Somewhere deep down, he realizes he's searching for reasons not to kill Kyo. The next morning, while watching Kyo sleep, Yeri quietly says that promises no longer matter. Even though he promised his client he would kill him, he now wants Kyo to experience feeling special perhaps for the first time in his life. Yet Yeri ominously adds that Kyo's brightest moment could also become his last. Later, Kyo returns to work in the library. A guard asks how he's feeling, and Kyo says he's much better. While working, Kyo notices he feels strangely lighter than before. He thinks perhaps recovering from his illness is why he feels that way. He also remembers the comforting dream he had and vaguely recalls hearing Yeri's voice in it, though he isn't sure whether it was truly a dream or not. Meanwhile, guards escort Yeri to the visiting room. As he walks in, he notices inmate 2089 leaving the area and irritably wonders why they always cross paths. 2089 mocks him, joking that even a punk like Yeri gets visitors. Yeri coldly tells him not to waste his time talking to him. A guard quickly orders 2089 back to his cell. It's then revealed that the same man who hired Yeri has come to visit him. Yeri politely asks whether everything is alright with his face, and the man replies that he's fine, he just happened to run into someone he didn't want to see on the way there. He changes the topic, commenting that this prison seems much better than the previous one, and remarking that even criminals appear to have different social classes. He hands Yeri the book he requested. Yeri thanks him, and the man warns him that Han Kyo's father has powerful connections in politics and finance, meaning there's a real chance he could interfere with the case. He also mentions rumors that Kyo has already been exploited for sexual favors. Hearing this, Yeri immediately objects, saying that, as far as he can tell, Kyo hasn't been involved with anyone. The man instantly questions how Yeri could possibly know something like that. Yeri awkwardly explains that he only meant he's been trying to earn Kyo's trust in order to complete his mission properly, and during that process, he realized Kyo is actually very inexperienced and naive. The man asks if there's anything he should be worried about. Yeri denies it and explains he only requested the book because there are things about the case he still doesn't understand. The man says Yeri is the expert here, so he trusts his judgment. However, he reminds Yeri not to forget to inform him once he decides to complete the contract. He also warns him that if he fails, the loss will be entirely his own, reminding Yeri that only he can truly set him free from prison. He then asks whether Yeri misses the outside world. Later, during lunch, several prisoners watch the news on TV while Kyo grabs a cola from a vending machine. The news discusses the approval of the Prolock B drug. Hearing it, Kyo realizes it's the same medication he has been taking. Suddenly, 2089 approaches from behind, startling him so badly he almost drops the can. 2089 catches it for him and says he heard Kyo was sick and had genuinely been worried about him. Then he secretly slips something else into Kyo's hand. When Kyo looks down, he realizes it's a condom. Kyo blushes furiously while 2089 casually remarks that it'll help him stay careful. He then hints that Kyo should already know what crime inmate 1818 committed. Shocked, Kyo asks how he knows that. 2089 leans closer and replies that information like that doesn't come for free. Before the conversation can continue, the boss prisoner arrives. 2089 asks him to give them some privacy, but the boss prisoner refuses. Angered, 2089 reminds him that he already paid him with cigarettes and other favors in exchange for leaving Kyo alone for a while. The boss prisoner grabs him by the collar, but before things escalate, the guards announce the end of lunch and order everyone back to their cells. As Kyo walks away, he realizes the other prisoners have only stopped bothering him because of 2089's influence. 2089 notices Kyo staring and tells him that if he's so curious about Yeri, he should ask him directly. But he adds that someone like Yeri would never openly confess his crime. Back in his cell, Kyo thinks about how everything in prison seems transactional. He wonders why 2089 gave him the condom for free and starts overthinking whether it was because his pheromones are so strong. He also nervously realizes that he and Yeri never used protection. When Kyo opens the cell door, he's startled to find Yeri already there. At the same time, Yeri is equally surprised to see Kyo return so early. Both secretly think the other arrived too soon. Yeri hurriedly hides the book he received earlier, while Kyo panics over where to hide the condom before Yeri notices it and starts teasing him. Trying to act natural, Kyo asks about the book. Yeri casually says, a friend gave it to him. Yuri casually says a friend gave it to him. Curious, Kyo asks what kind of book it is and why it isn't available in the library. Yuri refuses to show it to him, claiming it isn't suitable for children. Kyo immediately assumes it's some kind of explicit magazine and becomes embarrassed. Suddenly, Yuri notices a strange scent on Kyo and immediately grows suspicious. He grabs Kyo closer and accuses him of wandering off, only to come back smelling like another alpha. He teasingly says their little chick can't even wait anymore and has already started looking for dirty fun elsewhere. Kyo desperately denies it and explains that 2089 only tried to give him something, but Yuri refuses to listen and kisses him instead. Just as the mood intensifies, guards suddenly announce a surprise inspection. Both freeze instantly. Yuri panics about hiding the book, while Kyo worries about the condom. As guards order all inmates into the hallway, Yuri quietly tells Kyo to hide the book since he works in the library and can make an excuse for having it. Kyo nervously asks if the contents are really that extreme, and Yuri jokingly insists it's definitely not meant for innocent kids like him. Then Kyo admits he also has something to hide and asks Yuri to cover for him using his infirmary position. When Yuri asks what it is, Kyo reluctantly hands him the condom. Yuri stares at it in shock before glaring at Kyo internally, wondering what his little chick was doing with something like that. A guard notices the item and questions Yuri about it. Thinking quickly, Yuri lies that he accidentally took it while cleaning the doctor's cabinet at the infirmary and intended to return it later. The guard says it sounds suspicious and decides he'll confirm it with the doctor afterward. Meanwhile, Yuri silently spirals with jealousy, wondering how Kyo got the condom in the first place. He knows only someone like 2089 could obtain such things inside prison. Yuri wonders whether Kyo paid for it somehow, but quickly rejects the thought, refusing to believe Kyo would trade his body for something like that. At the same time, another guard reaches for the book. Internally panicking, Yuri realizes the guard absolutely cannot open it. Before the guard can inspect it, Kyo innocently explains that he simply forgot to return the book to the library. The guard says he'll decide whether that excuse is believable. Yuri quickly interrupts, reminding the officer that Kyo was sick earlier that morning. Secretly signaling Kyo, he encourages him to pretend to faint. Kyo immediately collapses to the floor. The guards soften at the sight, while Yuri catches him dramatically, secretly praising him for the performance. Another guard asks what's going on, and Yuri explains he's taking Kyo to the infirmary. One officer offers to come along, but the other quickly stops him, saying the warden hates dealing with unnecessary complications, especially when inmate 7337 is involved. He orders Yuri to take Kyo away immediately. Once inside the infirmary, Yuri drops Kyo onto the bed and starts relaxing, relieved they avoided suspicion. Then, teasingly, he says he can't wait to hear why their valued customer decided to buy a condom. Confused, Kyo asks what purchase he's talking about. Yuri grabs him by the collar and says the first thing he wants to know is just how far. Kyo went with 2089. Afterward, once they calm down again, Yuri changes the bed sheets and points out that they never even ended up using the condom. He jokingly insists Kyo must have paid something valuable to get it. Kyo blushes and explains that 2089 suddenly handed it to him without asking for anything in return. He says he only tried to hide it because he knew Yuri would tease him mercilessly about it. Yuri pinches Kyo's nose playfully and admits he already knew that. Then, smirking, he asks whether Kyo at least enjoyed himself. Deep down, Kyo shyly admits to himself that he did. At the same time, Yuri quietly thinks about how unbelievable it is that he's supposed to betray and kill someone like Kyo. Suddenly, they hear footsteps approaching. Yuri quickly tells Kyo to hide the book. Guards storm in and angrily confront Yuri, saying he lied to them. They checked with the doctor, who confirmed Yuri was never told to clean the cabinet. As punishment for theft and lying, inmate 1818 is sentenced to solitary confinement. Guards immediately begin dragging Yuri away, while Kyo watches helplessly. The guards say that the real punishment for inmate 737 is being left alone in the cell. Hearing this, both Yuri and Kyo are shocked. Yuri immediately starts worrying about Kyo, while Kyo panics internally, wondering what he's supposed to do now. Later in the cafeteria, the other prisoners gossip about how Kyo's cellmate has been punished, leaving him completely alone. Watching everything unfold, one of the guards thinks to himself that it doesn't matter whether the inmates use inhibitors or not. Alphas are naturally ruthless. Meanwhile, several alpha prisoners quietly begin planning how to target Kyo, now that Yuri is gone. Hearing their conversations, Kyo realizes he's in serious danger. He reflects on how, when he first arrived in the cell and spent his early days there, things didn't feel so terrifying. But now the room suddenly feels larger, colder, and darker. He had always been used to being alone, so why does it feel unbearable now? Kyo slowly realizes how dependent he has become on Yuri's presence. At that moment, inmate 2089 approaches carrying his tray and says it looks like Kyo needs a new guard. Furious, Kyo blames him for everything, accusing him of knowing this would happen all along. He even points out that the condom 2089 gave him now seems suspicious. 2089 calmly denies it. saying he only gave Kyo the condom because he was worried about him. He reminds Kyo how expensive such items are inside the prison. He then says that if Kyo wants someone to blame for Yeri ending up in solitary confinement, he should ask Yeri himself once he comes back. According to him, it was entirely Yeri's own fault. Then 2089 asks what Kyo thinks about him becoming his new protector. Kyo stares at him suspiciously, but 2089 points out that he's already been protecting him from the other inmates. Kyo insists that Yari will return soon. 2089 shrugs and says maybe it'll happen tomorrow, or maybe it'll take over a week. But what really matters, he says, is whether Kyo can survive even a single day alone under these conditions. That thought terrifies Kyo. He realizes he may not last even one day surrounded by so many dangerous alphas. Still, he quietly admits he has no money to offer in exchange for protection. 2089 smirks and says he's not the type to provide services for free. However, he points out that Kyo possesses something far more valuable, his body. Depending on what Kyo is willing to do with it, 2089 says he might even provide him with extra services. He tells Kyo to think carefully because he doesn't have much time left. If Kyo accepts 2089 promises, he'll reveal why inmate 1818 is in prison and why his name tag is yellow. Meanwhile, in solitary confinement, a guard brings Yeri dinner and sarcastically tells him that starving himself won't shorten his punishment. After the guard leaves, Yeri slams his fist angrily against the wall. A while later, 2 guards enter his cell. One of them orders Yeri to strip for a cavity search. The second guard hesitates, arguing that solitary confinement was already excessive punishment for such a small offense and that the warden never ordered a strip search. The first guard counters that the doctor recently reported missing items, yet nothing was found in Yeri's cell, so they now need to search his body thoroughly. Hearing this, Yeri immediately realizes 2089 must be behind it. The first guard sends the other one outside and forces Yeri to remove all his clothes. Once he's completely undressed, the guard orders him to stand against the wall with his arms and legs spread apart. Irritated, Yeri snaps back at him, asking what nonsense he's muttering about. The guard becomes visibly startled and awkwardly rushes through the inspection before abruptly ending it. Before leaving, he passes along a message from Yeri's client. If Yeri doesn't want to be humiliated like this again, he should hurry up and earn his freedom. Ever since Yeri was sent to solitary confinement, Kyo's situation rapidly worsens. Prisoners constantly gather outside the shower room, waiting for a chance to catch him alone, making it impossible for him to even bathe safely. Kyo realizes the pills aren't suppressing his scent properly anymore, which makes showering even more necessary. When Yeri was around, at least he could do simple things without fear. Returning to his cell in frustration, Kyo finally admits to himself that he truly needs Yeri. At the same time, he also realizes he can't trust 2089 either. The way 2089 talks about using his body in exchange for protection makes him deeply uneasy. Right then, 2089 appears again and mocks Kyo, pointing out that without Yeri around, he can barely even manage to eat properly. He asks whether Kyo is still hesitating about offering his body or not. Kyo angrily refuses, insisting he only skipped one meal and is perfectly fine. But 2089 calmly asks what will happen tomorrow or the day after that. What about the showers? Does Kyo even realize how many alphas are waiting outside just for a chance to taste him? Then 2089 bluntly tells him he only has 2 choices. Either he makes a deal with him, or things will become far worse. He chillingly explains that after Kyo agrees, he'll sell access to him to other alphas at a reasonable price. Horrified, Kyo asks what he means by that. 2089 coldly explains that Kyo could never earn enough money by serving only one person. According to him, that's not how things work in prison. He says that after he's satisfied with Kyo himself, he'll simply pass him around to others. First, he plans to transfer into Kyo's cell by any means necessary. Then, once he gets tired of him, he'll let other prisoners use him too. He describes Kyo as though he's nothing more than meat to be consumed, casually discussing how he could charge multiple inmates at once. He even says he'd provide drugs to make the experience easier for Kyo, though he'd still need to limit how many people could use him each day so Kyo's body wouldn't completely break down. Watching Kyo grow pale and start sweating in fear, 2089 calmly reminds him once again that if he refuses the offer, he won't even get the right to choose who comes after him. The man continues threatening Kyo, warning him that the prisoners even bring in outside customers because they're always desperate. He says that even if Kyo passes out, they still won't stop. The most terrifying part, he adds, is that if Kyo ends up pregnant, he won't even know who the father is. He forces Kyo to choose: come to him willingly, or become nothing more than a human toilet for the others. Just as Kyo is about to respond, the scene shifts. Yari is shown sitting alone, frustrated. He mutters that he thought all of this would only last a single day, and wonders how much longer they plan to keep him locked up there. He starts suspecting that everything was intentionally arranged just to drag him into another job. He can't contact his client either, which only makes him more suspicious. Yeri wonders if the client became wary of him and purposely separated him from Kyo so someone else could take over the job. Furious, he mutters that nobody better lay a hand on his chick. He swears that once he gets out, he'll make it clear that Kyo belongs only to him. The scene then cuts to the jailer speaking with a guard. The jailer is shocked to learn that inmate 1818 has been kept in solitary confinement for 4 days when it was only supposed to last 1 night. The guard explains that Yeri caused trouble despite being just a civil servant. The jailer becomes worried that Kyo or inmate 1818's lawyer might discover what's happening. The guard says the rumors spreading through the prison make things worse. People are saying the jailer deliberately sent 1818 after Kyo. The jailer angrily reminds him that Kyo is young and inexperienced, meaning he doesn't yet know how to properly file complaints or expose how badly they are treating him. The guard reassures him that nothing will happen and promises to take responsibility if 1818 causes trouble. The story shifts again, showing Kyo in the shower room with another prisoner named Pigeon. Pigeon tells him to take off his clothes. After Kyo undresses, Pigeon whistles at the sight of him. The scene ends there, then resumes with Kyo stepping out, holding a towel while Pigeon teasingly asks if he enjoyed the shower. Kyo is confused, and Pigeon jokes that he only meant the shower itself, unless Kyo had some dirty thoughts in mind. He flirts shamelessly, saying Kyo's body is beautiful and acting as though they've grown close after sharing secrets together. Kyo immediately pushes him away and tells him not to touch him. Pigeon only laughs it off before leaving Kyo at his cell and telling him they'll meet again tomorrow. The next morning, guards come to take Yeri for a shower. On the way, Yeri secretly hopes he'll catch even a glimpse of Kyo while showering. He overhears other inmates gossiping that Kyo and Pigeon have been spending all their time together, and that Pigeon is even making a customer list to sell Kyo. Hearing this, Yeri recalls the guard's earlier words and wonders if his client has truly abandoned him. Angry at himself, he admits he never took the job seriously because he assumed disposing of that psychopathic makeup prostitute would be easy. Furious, he punches the wall hard enough to injure his hand. When the guard rushes in after hearing the noise, Yeri innocently claims he may have fractured his hand by accident. Soon, rumors spread throughout the prison that someone intentionally injured himself just to escape solitary confinement. Meanwhile, Kyo is working in the library while Pigeon reads nearby. Pigeon casually remarks that things have been unusually peaceful lately, but Kyo tells him to shut up. Deep down, however, Kyo finds himself wondering when the big bad wolf will return. He never imagined he would actually miss seeing an alpha's face. Pigeon notices Kyo drifting off in thought and teases him. He warns that if Kyo keeps ignoring him, he won't reveal why inmate 1818 is really there. Annoyed, Kyo snaps back, saying it doesn't matter what crime Yeri committed because Pigeon is also an alpha criminal. He also demands that Pigeon stop touching him for no reason. Pigeon finds Kyo's angry reactions amusing. Then he suddenly asks if Kyo only enjoys intimacy with that idiot Yeri. He accuses Kyo of becoming obsessed with Yeri, to the point of forgetting what his own father did to him. According to Pigeon, Kyo is showing signs of Stockholm Syndrome and becoming emotionally attached to a killer. As he says this, Pigeon suddenly forces a kiss on Kyo. Disgusted, Kyo immediately pushes him away. Seeing Kyo's reaction, Pigeon jokingly wonders if Kyo might already be pregnant. He laughs that it can't be his child since he's barely started anything, then suggests it could belong to that bastard. Some nearby prisoners overhear the conversation. Kyo quickly denies it. Soon after, guards announce that the library is closing and order everyone who isn't volunteering to leave. Pigeon tells Kyo he'll wait outside and warns him not to get pregnant with Yeri's child, or he'll end up in serious trouble. He even reminds Kyo that he had given him condoms earlier, sarcastically complaining that this is hardly proper gratitude. Once Pigeon leaves, Kyo wipes his mouth in disgust, thinking about how repulsive Pigeon felt. Suddenly, Yeri's voice speaks from behind him. "So now you prefer Pigeon over me." Startled, Kyo turns around. Yeri smirks and says that if Kyo truly preferred him, he should run into his arms and beg him to go easy on him because Kyo belongs to him. Kyo can only respond with a confused huh. Yeri steps closer, his possessiveness obvious. Internally, he admits he hated seeing Kyo with Pigeon and felt the urge to tear him apart. Yet at the same time, he can't deny how much he missed Kyo. Yeri demands the truth and asks whether Kyo thought about him whenever someone else touched him. As Yeri releases his pheromones, Kyo notices how strangely safe and excited the scent makes him feel. Normally, Yeri only released them during intimate moments. Yeri's voice grows deeper as he demands an answer. Overwhelmed, Kyo suddenly kisses him and even licks him before realizing what he's done. Embarrassed, he quickly notices Yeri's injured hand and asks what happened. Yeri brushes it off teasingly.